Welcome to Unbreakable Truth. In today's video, we're stepping inside the one place we were all taught to feel safe, and tearing that illusion apart. Because when the words, "This is a lockdown," crackle through the speakers, everything changes. The familiar hum of classrooms, the chatter of friends, the steady rhythm of a school day, it all collapses into silence. Every sound becomes a threat. Every shadow, a question. Every heartbeat, too loud. The stories you're about to hear aren't fiction. They're not nightmares dreamt up in the middle of the night. These are real experiences, shared by people who lived through the unthinkable, moments when schools became cages, when doors rattled with hands no one wanted to see, when survival depended on silence. Tonight, I'll take you through 3 stories of terror locked behind classroom doors, cafeteria walls, and even the basement shadows of a school building. 3 stories that prove how thin the line is between ordinary and horrific. So settle in. And remember, as these voices echo through the dark, every detail comes from someone who lived it. It was a Friday afternoon in calculus class, the kind of day that felt like it would never end. The clock ticked toward 3, each second dragging slower than the last. I remember staring at the board while my teacher scribbled equations, half listening, half dreaming about the weekend. The room smelled faintly of pencil shavings and dry erase markers, and the sun poured in through tall windows, casting long rectangles of light across the floor. My classmates shifted restlessly in their seats, some doodling, some sneaking glances at their phones, all of us silently willing the day to end. Then the intercom crackled. It wasn't unusual to hear the speaker buzz, but the voice that followed wasn't casual. It was clipped, tense, almost shaky. "Attention. We are going into lockdown. This is not a drill." The room froze. My teacher's marker dropped from his hand, clattering against the whiteboard ledge. A heavy silence fell over us, the kind that makes your ears ring. For a moment, no one moved. Then, suddenly, everything happened at once. My teacher lunged for the classroom door, twisting the lock. Students scrambled out of their chairs, the screech of metal legs against tile echoing too loudly in the quiet. Desks were shoved, barricades built in panicked silence. I crouched behind a cluster of chairs with 2 of my friends, our knees drawn to our chests. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The windows no longer seemed like portals for sunlight but like fragile panes waiting to shatter. My teacher motioned for quiet, his finger pressed hard against his lips. The only sound was the shallow, uneven rhythm of our collective breathing. Then came the noise. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The sound echoed down the hallway outside our room, closer, then closer still. Each step made my chest tighten, my breath hitch. We all leaned toward the door, eyes wide, straining to hear. The footsteps stopped. And then, pounding. Someone was slamming their fists against our classroom door, rattling the handle, shaking the frame. The sound was thunderous in the silence. My stomach dropped, my vision blurred, and every instinct screamed to run even though there was nowhere to go. One girl stifled a sob. Another pressed both hands over her mouth. The door rattled again, harder this time, the metal vibrating in its hinges. Then, a voice. A man's voice, muffled but harsh. Screaming words we couldn't quite make out. Rage poured through the door like smoke seeping through cracks. My teacher held his ground, eyes fixed on the door, one hand outstretched as if he could will it to hold. The pounding went on for what felt like forever, then, silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. No footsteps. No voices. Just the ringing of blood in my ears. Minutes stretched into hours. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't dare look. We stayed crouched, our bodies stiff, our throats dry, afraid to even shift our weight for fear of making noise. At some point, I noticed tears on my hands, though I hadn't realized I'd been crying. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, another voice filled the intercom. Calm, steady. All clear. You may return to normal activity. But nothing about us was normal anymore. Slowly, hesitantly, we peeled ourselves out of hiding. The desks were pushed aside, the lights flicked on, but the fear clung to us like smoke. We filed into the hallway, quiet, pale, shaken. That's when we heard the whispers. Rumors moving like wildfire. The man outside our door, the one pounding and screaming, hadn't been a stranger. He'd been a janitor. One we all knew. Someone who had walked these halls for years. That night, I lay awake replaying the sound of fists slamming against the door. The handle rattling. The voice screaming. The thought that safety isn't always broken by strangers. Sometimes it's shattered by the people you thought you could trust. The next story begins on a day that should have been ordinary. The cafeteria was alive with noise, trays clattering, friends laughing, teachers pacing between tables to make sure no one caused trouble. Outside, the sky had grown dark with storm clouds, a steady drizzle tapping against the wide glass walls. The whole room glowed gray, filled with restless energy. I was in line for lunch when the announcement came. Lockdown. This is not a drill. At first, no one moved. The word seemed too surreal to process. But then the teachers sprang into action, their voices sharp. Move. Get down, stay quiet, now. Chaos erupted. Students stumbled out of their chairs, some crying, others laughing nervously like it was a game. The cafeteria workers rushed to lock doors and drag blinds, but the walls of glass offered no protection. Teachers ordered us to sit on the floor, away from windows. I slid against the cool tile, my back pressed to a wall, my knees pulled tight to my chest. Someone whispered that a man had been spotted just beyond the schoolyard. Someone unstable, dangerous. And suddenly, the storm outside seemed alive. The rain smeared the glass, shadows shifting in the blur. Every flicker of movement beyond the window felt like a figure waiting to burst inside. We sat there for what felt like hours. The laughter died quickly, replaced with sniffles, the sound of someone trying to muffle a sob. One of my friends whispered that her cousin had once been in a lockdown where shots were fired. Another swore she could hear footsteps outside. Fear passed between us like static. Then one girl, Brandy, began to tell a story. Maybe to distract us, maybe to comfort herself. She said that one Halloween night, she'd been out trick-or-treating when a man in a mask followed her and her friends for blocks. They ran, but every time they turned, he was closer. Eventually, they ducked into a stranger's house and begged for help. The police never caught him. Her voice trembled as she spoke, the storm battering the windows behind her, and suddenly her Halloween memory felt less like a story and more like a warning. When the all clear finally came, relief rippled through the cafeteria, but no one cheered. We moved slowly, quietly, our eyes darting to the windows as though expecting a figure to appear at the last second. Later, we learned the man outside had been found. He wasn't armed, but he was unstable. He lived just beyond the schoolyard, close enough to see us every day, close enough to make the walls of glass feel like invitations. That was the day I learned fear doesn't always come crashing in with noise. Sometimes it lingers outside, quiet, waiting, reminding you that danger can live just beyond the glass. The third story is mine. I was 22, fresh out of college, buried in student debt, and working back at my old high school as an intern in the IT department. My office was in the basement, a cluttered place of old monitors and tangled wires, but with the small comfort of air conditioning and quiet. My co-workers, Dave and Gary, were upstairs that day, leaving me alone in the cool, dimly lit room. I was halfway through my lunch when the phone rang. The secretary's voice was sharp, rushed. Lockdown. This is not a drill. Someone is in the building. Possibly armed. Stay put. Lights off. My heart dropped. I snapped off the monitor, killed the desk lamp, and the room plunged into shadow. But the truth hit me fast, my office had no door. Just an open frame leading into the hall. The only exit at the far end was an old metal door that didn't even lock. I was exposed. I slid under my desk, clutching my phone, texting my coworkers. No reply. Minutes stretched, each second louder than the last. I tried distracting myself with mindless scrolling, telling myself it was nothing. Then the basement door creaked open. Footsteps descended the stairs, not cautious, not hesitant, but purposeful. My lungs froze. The sound grew closer, then stopped. A shadow appeared in the doorway. A man stood there, breathing heavily. He didn't turn on the lights. He just stood. Then my phone betrayed me. A ding. A text. The glow lit my hands. The man moved instantly. His footsteps closed in, and I scrambled out from under the desk, words spilling out of me. Please. Don't hurt me. He grabbed my arm, rough but steady. His face was unfamiliar. He wore a red plaid shirt, a cap pulled low. It's okay, he said calmly, too calmly. I'm just hiding down here with you. What's going on upstairs? Something in his eyes made my stomach twist. He asked if there was an exit, and I pointed, hand trembling. But then I looked at the text. It was from Dave. Some guy with a gun shot Mr. Buckley. He's wearing a red shirt and hat. Whatever you do, don't come upstairs. Red shirt. Red hat. My breath caught. I looked up. He was staring at me now, suspicion hardening his face. Time froze. Then instinct took over. I bolted, running past him toward the stairs. Behind me, a gunshot cracked, deafening in the enclosed space. Metal rang as the bullet ricocheted, sparks flickering in the dark. I didn't stop. I flew up the stairs, lungs burning, vision tunneling. At the top, light exploded against my eyes. Police were everywhere, weapons raised. The moment the man in red emerged, they swarmed him, dragging him down in a storm of shouts and orders. I collapsed against the wall, the echo of the gunshot roaring in my skull. Later, I learned he had come for Mr. Buckley, a teacher he blamed for some long-forgotten grudge. Mr. Buckley survived. But the sound of that shot still follows me. Even years later, in silence, I can hear it, not just the crack of the gun, but the ringing that followed, metallic and endless, the sound of death brushing past me by inches. And that is the truth of what it feels like to be trapped in the silence of a lockdown. A calculus class frozen in fear as fists pounded the door. A cafeteria turned to a cage while shadows pressed closer. A basement office where one intern came face to face with death itself. 3 different stories. 3 different people. Yet the same echo of terror, the sudden realization that the walls we trust to keep us safe can just as easily hold us hostage. Long after the doors are unlocked, after the sirens fade and the day resumes, something lingers. The silence of the classroom. The faces of classmates lit only by emergency lights. The ringing echo of a single gunshot in a dark basement. Lockdowns ended. But the fear never fully does. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to these voices, for carrying their stories with you. Because maybe the real unbreakable truth is this: safety is fragile, and it's in remembering these moments that we learn never to take it for granted. Stay safe out there. And until next time, remember, the scariest stories are the ones that are real.